Hello, welcome to the next one of our little drawing sessions. So we're going to have a go at drawing a shoe today. If you've not done a shoe before, they're actually really interesting to draw. There's lots of different folds and shadows and textures. This one's got a few different types of textures on it. So I'm going to use some quite basic drawing equipment. I'm going to use a pencil, HB. I'm actually going to use a 2B shading pencil as well. And I'm going to use some water-soluble pens. So I've got some fine liners, and what works really nice is just some like normal felt tips. So these are just normal children's felt tips I'm going to use. So I'm not going to use anything really specialist for this. So put the shoe in front of you, and then it depends what angle you want to draw it. I think they're quite actually easier to draw from straight ahead rather than the side in many ways. So I'm going to draw it looking straight ahead. So I need to do a little mark at the top and the bottom of my page where I want it to fit so that I know it's going to fit on the sheet of paper. And then I'm going to work out how wide it's going to be as well. So these little marks may change. These are just so that I've got an idea of what sort of shape I want to fit it into. And then I need to look at the proportions. It's really important to look at things when you're drawing them and work out roughly how far down things are compared to each other. So how big is this bit, for example, compared to this bit? What are the proportions, the sizes of things compared to each other? So I need to look and try and work out where all the lines are going to fit. So I know that the opening of the shoe up here is actually got to fit into that shape there. So I'm going to really lightly sketch that in. And then I've got to then fit the edge of the shoe in as well. So I'm going to really lightly draw around there. Just going to lower my blind a bit because it's a little bit light there, so it's actually harder to see. Put this down. That might come out a little bit better. There we go. Too much sunlight. So then I'm going to draw in the sides. I've got the sides here. And this is where the laces start. So I've got the top up here, look. This is the back of my shoe. And then it comes round like this and drops into the sides where the laces are. And then I'm going to do this bit lightly because actually it's covered by laces in many bits of it. But I'm going to just draw in here the opening. And it actually comes down, if you look at the distance, it's actually slightly bigger than this bit here. Move that up slightly so you can see it a bit better. So this distance is just slightly bigger than this one as I'm looking at it from the front. So I'm going to just draw in that part there. And then I'm going to run the lines down the side. And this is going to form the edge of my shoe. So distance wise then, look at how wide the laces area is. And then how wide these distances are at the side. So this bit's a lot smaller. So that runs down to about here. And whereas this bit's a little bit wider. So that runs to about there. And then I'm going to just draw around. I'm going to work out how far down the toe needs to be. So the distance from this toe is just slightly smaller than the height of the laces. So if I took that distance and just went a little bit smaller, it would probably run to about here. And then if you look at the shape of the toe, it's actually a little bit more of a point like this. Okay, so that's the front part of my shoe. So I need to get a rubber and just adjust some of those lines now. And now what I need to draw is the bit of the sole that I can see underneath. It just sticks out slightly on this side. And then actually I've got this bit at the front of my shoe here, which actually goes up and then down there. Like that, look. Okay, so you can do your lines nice and light. I'm doing them a little bit darker so that you can see them. And then the sole comes around here like along the bottom. I can now rub out that bit at the front. So I've got my part at the front and then I've got these bits at the sides here. And I need to look at the shaping of the shoe. So actually I've got this darker bit that goes inside around here. This is my inside of the sole there, and it actually just fades out because you can see the bottom of the sole in here, and it starts about there. I'm just gonna, and it runs right up to those edges there, look. and actually goes right into the side of the shoe there. So that's my inside sole. And then the pink part of the shoe actually starts from just at the sides here. Okay, so I'm just starting to get the shape now. So if you need to use your rubber to just make any little changes and adjust the position of things, then that's fine. Remember, rubbers aren't for mistakes, they're just for making changes. And then I'm not going to focus too much on the writing and the detail, but I'm going to look at where the shapes are. So I've got these lines that run over the sides of my shoe, and they're about level with where the second line up of the holes start. So if I want to do a little dots of where the holes of the laces are, that will help me get my proportions. So that one and that one are going to be there. And then I've got a little gap and I've got another one. So it might help you to count how many holes up you need to go. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a slightly bigger, 6, and then a smaller gap to the 7th. So I need to fit 6 in between here and here. Okay, so you need to work out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need to work out how to fit 6 in there. So do it really lightly at first until you've got them an equal distance apart. And then there was a slightly bigger gap to the 7th one over here. Okay, and then it'll be exactly the opposite across to the other side. So you could really lightly sketch in lines to help you work across. Okay, so these dots are just to show you where they are. That's not actually the holes. They're just where the holes are going to be. So you might want to then fade those back so that you can only just see them, because you don't want them to be in the way of your drawing when you start doing the laces. So the laces then, if you look at them on mine, they go across and then they go under, over, and then under, over, then under. So they're going across like this all the way. Okay, apart from this front one, which is straight. So if I do the front one in first, that'll be nice and easy. So if you look, they actually go narrower, the laces, as they come in and out of the holes, look. So rather than just doing a straight band, I've done 2 lines, but I've narrowed them in towards the dot. And then the hole, actually, you can draw around it like this, look. So you can do like a little, almost like a crescent moon shape that goes around it. And that's showing that the laces are coming out of the hole there. Okay, so that's my first one. And then my next one, it does get a bit complicated now, so you probably want to do it really light to start with. Ignore the underneath ones. We're just going to do the top ones for now. So let's look at this one here. So this one goes out, and then it goes across to underneath that one there. So you skip that one out. So it goes across, and it just sits underneath there. So I'm going to do it to about here. Okay, and then that one goes from there across to underneath the one above that one. So we're missing that one out. So this time we go across and it goes over the other lace and then under to here. So then what you need to do is rub that bit out so it sits over the top. So these are really roughly drawn in initially, and then we'll just tidy them up once we know we've got them all in the right place. You don't spend ages shading it to find that actually you've done it in the wrong bit. So that's that one. So then the next lace then, this one comes over, under, and then comes out there. So it comes out at this one here. So over and then under. So it stops there. Over and then under. And then we'll come in at, I'll have to work this out myself now. Should come in there, shouldn't it? Let's work this out. 3. Comes into that one now. Let's miss that one out. Just get a bit confusing, doesn't it? All these laces. There we go. And then this one. So we're on the 1, 2, 3, 4th now. 1, 2, 3, 4th one. So it gets in a bit tangled because it goes under this little part here. So I've got like this sort of a folded back strip that reaches up to the tongue. So we need to draw the tongue in actually because we haven't done that yet. That's going to be up here, look. So there's the tongue. It's actually slightly tucked away underneath the shoe there. So this tongue has got a strip down the middle, look. It runs to about here. and this lace goes underneath. So we're on the 1, 2, 3, 4th lace, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one, it goes over and then it tucks in underneath that strip there. And it comes out again by the looks of it. Let's work this out. Oh, it actually goes round and up there. So it comes out up to here. Okay, so this one here, so we're on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4th one on this side. This one goes under as well. So again, get your rubber out so that you know which bits are going over and which bits are going under. And then this bit goes underneath and it comes out up here. Again, underneath, so we don't really see it. So while we're doing that, then let's just go around and do our crescent shaped moons around these. So you might need to now just thicken up the laces a bit at the corners if you've done them really thin. There we go. And then this side here. There we are. Okay, so our other laces, then we've got a bit here. So we're on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now they get quite loose here and they actually sort of go up and over. And then they stop because they go into a knot shape. So the knot is a bit more complicated. So we'll just do these bits first. So we're onto this side as well. So they start from the laces and they get to about here. And then we're just going to stop for now. And then these back ones, these top ones up here, these number 6, again, actually that doesn't go in a lace, it just goes underneath, so we can't really see it. So let's just do it to there anyway, because the knot's going to go over the top of that one. So these top ones, these go around to the lace here, look. So do 1, 2, and then we need to do the knot over the top of that. So some of these lines are going to get hidden by the knot now. These 7th eyelets, by the way, I haven't got anything in because I don't use those on this shoe. So they're just like a little hole with a line around for the eyelet. So we need to do the knot now. So let's try and only look at the loop, the ties, and then the knot bit in the middle. So let's do the knot first. So the knot is made up of one piece this way and then another piece that way, essentially. Okay, so you could draw in those 2 shapes there. And then the bow. So let's look at the bow and how far out it comes. It comes out just past the shoe there. So it comes out, round, and then it rejoins about here. Okay, so it comes from the top out, round, it rejoins just above the bottom of that shape there. And then the lace comes in and over. So you're going to need your rubber to just rub out so that those knots appear on the top now. So actually some of those lines that we did earlier, remember, are going to get covered. So there's that loop. Let's do the loop on the other side. So this one doesn't come out quite as far as the edge of the shoe, depending on which angle you're looking at it. I'm going to do mine to about here. And then it round and it comes up to the bottom of there this time. Okay, so again, we need to rub out over those lines. There we are. Right, just the ties to do now. So if we look at one, it goes straight up and over and it points out higher than the tongue and it's on a slight angle about here. So it comes, there's the edge of the lace. And then we've got this straight, now they've got a name, those plastic bits. I can't remember what they're called, but the little plastic bit at the end. And then we can just rub out there. And then down here comes out just past the laces. And again, there's the tie there, look. So you're thinking, oh, all that work I did earlier and I'm rubbing it out. But you'll still see the little bits in between, so it was all worth doing. Right, so there, I've got my laces then. So if you've just rubbed out any bits that you need to go back over, you can just put those back in with your pencil. Okay, so that's my laces and my basic shape. I've got these lines here, so they run from the 2nd eyelet down and then they sort of scoot round like this. So I can just put those in and that's going to help form the shape of the shoe. And then I don't know if you can see, but I've got this line where the pattern fits in a shape here. So the pattern, I'm going to do this really lightly because there isn't an obvious line here. It's just where the pattern's got to fit. So that bit is going to fit into there. Okay. And then I've got my logo sort of at the side here. So I'm not going to do too much on that because it's not an advertisement for the shoe. So I'm just going to just put that in so I can put the colour in the right place. There we go. And then I've done the tongue there, and then all this is actually the sole inside there now. So really, once I've kind of started to do the shape, actually I can see a little bit of the heel coming out there. So actually on this trainer, it's got quite a good running heel on it. I'm going to put that down there. You can just see some of that at the side. So what I need to start doing now is putting in some of the shading and the colour. There's a bee in my room. Let me just see if I can let him out. There you go. There he's gone. Free the bee. So I'm going to use this pink pen, and Charles felt tips I think are really nice for doing drawing work. Don't forget though, once you've, he's trying to come back in. Let me just get rid of this bee. Go on, go out. Once you've gone over pencil with a pen, you can't then rub that pencil out. So any lines that you do, you need to make sure that you've faded them back or that you're happy for them to be there. So I'm just going to look at where the darker areas of the pink are and just lightly sketch those in. So I'm using lines that follow the flow of the shape of the shoe. And that's going to mean that I get quite a nice shape when I add the water, because I'm going to use some water and a brush to make these pens dissolve, I think. So I'll add a little bit of water to that. So I'm keeping it quite sketchy and loose, and this is kind of a nice way to draw if you've never done this style of drawing before. It's not too precise, and it's just about building in layers of lines and colours. So can you see how I'm keeping it quite light there? I'm not colouring in with a pen. I'm just using the pen almost to form the darker pink shadows. So where I want it a bit lighter, I'm actually not going to put the pen down. I'm going to use some water and a brush to just work back into it a little bit. So you don't have to use the water and the brush. If you just want to do a sketchy drawing with the pens, then you could do it that way as well. Using the shape of the shoe to show, rather than doing the lines that way, I'm following the shape of the shoe as I draw. And generally, when the light shines on something, the bits nearest to you are lighter. So as the light's shining down, as I look at it from my angle, this bit here is a little bit lighter. So I'm not going to do too much shading there. I'm just going to build more of the shading around the side. So I'm going to put a bit of that lime green in now that's on the sides here. I'm just going to sketch that in quite loosely. Again, I'm not really colouring it in solid. I'm just sketching now. And then a bit of pink in here as well. Now those laces are pink too, but I'm going to colour them in separately so that I get different mark making lines. If I try and just do it all as one, it's going to start to blur together. I'm going to sketch these in. And I've actually got a different pink. I'm not sure how different it is. Yeah, it's a bit darker. So I can use some of this darker pink as well, just to then bring in some of those shadows. So in the creases of the folds between the laces. So these will look quite good looking, those shadows in there. So I'm going to use this darker pink in the shadows there. That's going to really bring out the shadows between them and even where they cross over each other. So rather than using a black for your shadows, sometimes using a darker colour can look really nice. So if it's a pink shoe, you just use a darker shade of pink, or even a bit of red sometimes can look quite good. And that can look quite nice down here as well. Got a bit more shadow at the sides because the light's coming down here, so that bit's more in shadow. Right, so you can use bits of black. Use it quite sparingly though, because once you add water, the black does tend to make things quite dark. So I'm not going out, I'm not outlining everything. I'm just really putting little touches in where it is quite dark. So, I mean, the edge of the laces do have a little bit of black on them. So you could put a little bit of a black line around them, not just at the bottom edge they have it. So I could put a bit of that in there. But it's important not to go too dark. I haven't touched these top laces yet, so I need to have a look at those. And then down here, look, I've got the bottom of the shoe there. So I'm going to just sketch that in because that is dark. That's black there. That's got a bit of a line running through it. So I'm going to, rather than just colouring it in, I'm using the lines and the direction of the rubber tread there. Add those on. And then that black actually continues to about here, look, and then it just starts to fade out. You can just see a little bit of it running through there. And there's a little bit visible on the back, not much, just a few little black stripes there. And then obviously we've got this sole in here, sorry, the liner of the foot liner part before it gets to the sole. Now it is all sort of a black colour, but it's not all solid black. So where it's its darkest at the back here, I'm going to shade that in, but then I'm going to fade the pen out a bit as I move into the bits where the light's shining on it a bit more. So it just actually looks in those places a bit more like a dark grey. So more up here, look. So this bit here at the back, where I am sitting, the light's shining on it a bit more. So the trick is to keep your pen quite loose in your hand. If you're doing this with a pencil and doing it just as a more of a drawing, then you can maybe spend a little bit longer. You could pause this and spend a bit longer on each area, but really look at where those shadows and tones are. I need to do a bit more pink on my laces, so I'm going to go back and add to these bows now. So again, just shading around, following the lines that you've drawn, not doing it this way. If you've drawn a curve that way, then shade that way as well. And don't be afraid of leaving little bits of white paper as well. That'll really give your picture some life if you've got little bits of white shining through. It doesn't make it look unfinished, it just gives it a bit of energy really. And then I might use a bit of the darker pink on there as well. And particularly where the laces come out of the knot, there's going to be a bit of shadow. So I'm going to focus the darker pink in those areas where it will be in the corner, look, of these creases here, the bows. That's where it's going to look a bit darker. And then I need to work into it with a little bit of the black as well. And there are some black lines on there from the edge of the lace. Now, if you want to do any lines that are permanent, that aren't going to wash away, you could use a permanent fine liner if you've got one, or biro. That doesn't wash away when you add water. So you can add a bit of biro in there as well. And that's quite nice for doing sort of nice texture lines. I just do a little demonstration. So you can use these, look, for doing really nice sketchy lines. And sometimes you can use lines, look, to create shadow. It's called hatching. So it's where, if I zoom in a little bit closer, it's where you use the lines in different directions, usually diagonal one way and then diagonal the next. But I kind of like using almost like a scribbly method for building in shadow. And the harder you press and the closer together your lines are, the more it'll look like shadow. And then if you want to fade it out, you just press a bit lighter space out your lines a little bit more, and that's going to give you some really nice shadow effects in the gaps. So I'm going to use that. I'll zoom in a bit closer as I do this bit. I'm going to use that to try and recreate some of these shadows in here. Look, still got a bit of pink to do on these laces. Haven't quite finished those. So I'm using the pen now to work over, and these lines with the pen, these won't change when I add water. They'll stay nice and clear. As you go around, you might see little bits that you've missed, which I can see, so you can just then go back with your pen and work back into them a little bit. If you haven't got pens or anything like that, watercolour paints can look really nice as well. So I'm just using kind of almost like a scribble hatching method just to build in some of those shadows and the gaps. Now let's have another look at these bits that need adding to. And back with the pen one last time. So what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to get some water to it. So this is quite exciting, this bit. There's always an element of chance when you add water to things like this. You don't quite know how it's going to look, and that's part of the fun of it. So try and forget about worrying about it being a good outcome and use it as an experiment, a journey. And there's usually a way anyway that you can shape it once it's got water on it and push the colours around if they're not kind of appearing as you'd like them to. But you'll only ever get better or more accomplished or more experienced at anything if you practice it. So don't be disheartened by trying new things and them not turning out as expected. Most of the best art I've ever created has been partially unexpected. You know, sometimes you think you know how things are going to be, and actually they're not. And then you try something else and you stumble on something that works really well. Okay, so I'm going to try some water now. So I've just got some water and a brush. Let's move back up a little bit higher. I'm going to use a smallish brush, and the trick with using the water and the pens is to keep cleaning your water. Keep cleaning the brush with clean water. So when I put the water on here, look, it will just start to pull that colour across. I don't know if you can see that. Now you have to be quite light with your brush. If you press really hard, what's going to happen is it's going to tear your paper up. So I'm keep dipping my brush back in that water and putting clean water on. So as I paint the colour, look, see it pulls it down just a little bit. It won't do it loads. And then I'm putting clean water up to the edge just to blend it in. And I'm going to leave this bit in the middle quite white. That's going to be my white space. So do you remember me saying about exaggerating the where the light shines on something just to really make it stand out? So I'm not going to cover the whole thing in water. So I've left that bit dry there in the middle. And I'm just using the brush to just start to blend the pens in. They smudge really nicely. So I don't know if you can see that there, but look, it's just starting to smudge. Now, don't forget the black will smudge as well. So when you get near the black, you have to be careful. So try and avoid touching the black with the water until you're ready to blend it. So when you are, I'm going to do the black bits last, because once your brush and your water get dirty, it can affect all your other colours. So I'm almost tickling the surface of the paper really lightly, look. So can you see there? Look, it's smoothing down the colour, but those pen lines that we did with the biro, they're not changing. Now, what it will do, though, is any black you've done with a felt tip will smudge. Can you see it's just starting to grow grey there? So that's just going to give you a soft bit of shadow, but I'm cleaning my brush and water much more often. If you do it too often, if you don't do it, it'll make your colour just all go a little bit grey. I'm going to do that top bit last in a minute. I'm just pulling the water around there. If you're using just normal thin printer paper, you'll probably find it wrinkles quite a lot. So it's a good idea to try and get some drawing paper. I'm just putting a little bit on there because it's white, but kind of an off-white. So I'm just going to let some of that black come through, but not too much. Now, if you find you've got too much, what you can do is get a little bit of kitchen roll or tissue. And if it's flooded too much, you just get a small piece and lay it into it. And the water will climb up the paper. So you don't need to move it around and drag it. You just dab it a few times and that will absorb some of the excess. If you've gone a bit too dark in places and you want to pick some off, just dab a clean bit of tissue into it. So this bit at the back then, this is going to go quite dark when I put the colour on, look. And then what I can do is just gently working out from that once I've got the water on there. So I'm sort of pushing the water around the surface rather than pressing down hard. Look how light I'm holding my brush. I'm holding it up here really lightly. A strong wind would blow that brush out of my hand. That's how light you need to be holding it, really. If you grip it too hard, you're going to press down too hard and you'll ruin your paper. If you've got watercolour paper, you can afford to press down a little bit more. But really, it's about pushing the water around the paper. So I've put most of the water on there and then I've just gently dragged it out to build that grey tone around. And then actually this sole isn't bright white. It looks too white like that. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that blue off there, that bluey colour, and just put that into there to do the tone. And then just a little bit darker from the base here, just to build in that shadow under the tongue there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just quickly dry that off and then I'm going to work into it with a pen. So I'm just going to pause the recording while I use my hairdryer to dry that off. So I've just dried that off a little bit. It's still a bit damp in places, so I'll go quite light. So what I'm going to do now is just work back into it a little bit. So I'm just going to use the pen initially. If you are going to work back into it with a pen, it is damp. Be very careful not to rip your paper. Avoid using your fine liners on wet paper because it just ruins them, it just damages the nib. So I'm just going to then work in, and this is a good way to then bring back in some of those lines and edges if you feel that they need working into again. So it's a bit wet there, you see, so I'm going to be very careful because otherwise I'm going to rip the paper. You don't want to undo all that lovely work that you've just done. And then, I have got this pattern going on here, so you could sit and draw the pattern if you wanted to, or you could just sort of lightly sketch in some of these textures. I'm going to fade it out to the middle though, because I want that bit to look nice and light. So the light, sort of these almost dashed lines that run vertically down the shoe. Start to sketch some of those in. So it's a really nice, light way of drawing. And then if you're quite gestural in how you draw, you can really do some nice sketchy lines over the top. This is kind of how I like to draw, really quite illustrative, loose and free. And these little lines can just give it a bit of energy, lift it off the page a little bit. So just where you've got little areas of shadow, I'm just going to sketch in. I think biros are wonderful to draw with. Seen some lovely art that people create just using biro pens, or I should say ballpoint pens rather than biro pens. Let's move that out of the way a bit now. And you can go back in and add in some more colour if you want to. A bit of paint over the top can sometimes look quite nice. This is just normal drawing paper, so I'm not going to add too much wet stuff on here because it will eventually start to make it wrinkle. Just some nice energy lines there, but you could go back and add a bit more colour again. Just make sure your paper's dry if you're going to add your pens back on, or they will start to give in. And then you can look at where you really need to build in some of the darker shadows. If you've got a really creased shoe as well, you can really look at where the shadows lie and just start to shade in and out some of the details that you see. going to steady up here because it's a bit damp in the middle there. So we're coming to the end of our little shoe drawing. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's a little bit of fun. It's about trying out different ways of doing things that perhaps different to ways that you've done before. And there we go. So there's my shoe, my illustrated shoe using felt tips, biros, pencil, and a little bit of a brush and water. So really simple to do, using things that you can find around the house quite easily, especially if you've got children. There's always felt tips somewhere. But even just a cheap set, water-soluble pens work really nicely. Okay, hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for joining in with me.